What if one ordinary daytime television interview suddenly turned into the kind of moment people would be talking about for weeks? Not because of a shocking confession, not because of a surprise announcement, but because two well-known television personalities found themselves locked in a conversation that seemed to grow more uncomfortable with every passing minute. From the second Jenna Hager walked onto the stage, nobody in the audience had the slightest reason to believe anything unusual was about to happen. The smiles were genuine, the applause was loud. Kelly Clarkson welcomed her guest exactly the way millions of viewers had come to expect: warm, relaxed, and effortlessly friendly. It felt like another pleasant afternoon. Jenna returned the kindness immediately, praising Kelly for creating a show that people genuinely enjoy watching. She spoke about how welcoming the atmosphere always felt and joked that every visit felt less like a television appearance and more like catching up with an old friend. The audience laughed. Kelly laughed. Everything seemed perfectly on schedule. For several minutes, the conversation moved through familiar territory. They talked about books, they talked about family life, they discussed balancing careers with motherhood, writing personal stories, and connecting with audiences through honesty. Jenna explained that the most difficult stories to tell often became the ones that touched people the deepest. She believed vulnerability helped build trust, and Kelly agreed wholeheartedly. The chemistry appeared effortless. It was exactly the kind of conversation viewers tuned in to see. But then Kelly gently shifted gears. Her tone never changed. Her smile didn't disappear. Yet something about the next question instantly changed the atmosphere inside the studio. She mentioned that Jenna had recently found herself at the center of public discussion after comments she had made regarding working parents and the challenges balancing careers with raising children. Rather than ignoring the topic, Kelly decided to bring it into the conversation. It wasn't confrontational, at least not yet. It sounded like a fair opportunity for Jenna to explain what she had meant. Jenna nodded confidently. She explained that conversations online often removed context, making statements appear far harsher than they actually were. According to her, people had misunderstood her intentions, and she hoped viewers would understand that reality was far more complicated than a single headline. Kelly listened carefully. She wasn't interrupting. She wasn't arguing. Instead, she leaned forward slightly and asked a follow-up. If people misunderstood your words, she asked calmly, what exactly were you trying to say? The question hung in the air for a moment. Jenna answered thoughtfully. She spoke about identity, about how many parents struggle to balance work and family, about how careers can become an important part of someone's sense of purpose outside of parenting. Everything still sounded measured, reasonable, professional. The audience remained relaxed. But Kelly wasn't finished. She explained that many viewers had interpreted Jenna's earlier remarks differently. Some believed the comments suggested that certain working mothers were using careers as a way to avoid responsibilities at home. Kelly wasn't accusing. She simply wanted clarification. After all, a large percentage of her audience consisted of working parents trying to juggle impossible schedules every single day. If there had been confusion, this seemed like the perfect chance to clear it up. For the first time since the interview began, Jenna's expression changed. It wasn't dramatic. Most people watching probably wouldn't have noticed, but the bright confidence she'd entered with became noticeably more cautious. She repeated that her words had been taken out of context. She insisted that wasn't what she intended to communicate. Kelly nodded respectfully. Then came another question. Simple, direct. If that's not what you meant, why do you think so many people heard it that way? The studio suddenly became much quieter. There was no laughter anymore. No applause, only silence. Jenna explained that discussions around parenting had become emotionally charged. She argued that people often assumed the worst instead of trying to understand the full conversation. Kelly acknowledged that possibility, but she also reminded her that public figures carry influence, especially when speaking about subjects as personal as family and parenting. Every sentence matters, every word carries weight. That observation landed differently. Jenna's posture became noticeably more rigid. She crossed one leg over the other and folded her hands together more tightly than before. Meanwhile, Kelly remained calm. She wasn't raising her voice. She wasn't interrupting. She simply continued asking careful questions. Then came the moment that truly shifted everything. Kelly mentioned that she had reviewed Jenna's previous interview before today's conversation. She wanted to make sure she understood exactly what had been said rather than relying on headlines or social media reactions that immediately caught Jenna's attention. She looked surprised, almost uncertain. Kelly explained that she'd brought notes not because she expected an argument but because she believed important conversations deserved accuracy. Nobody in the audience moved. The room felt completely different now. It no longer resembled a light-hearted daytime interview. It felt more like two experienced broadcasters carefully testing each other's positions. Kelly referred back to one of Jenna's previous statements about career, motherhood, and family priorities, asking how viewers should interpret those words today. Jenna quickly responded that context mattered. She argued that isolated quotes often created misleading impressions. Kelly listened, then quietly replied, "I understand that context matters." She paused. "But words matter too." That sentence lingered in the room. For several seconds, neither woman spoke. The audience could almost feel the tension growing. Nobody expected a shouting match. Nobody expected insults. But everyone could sense they were watching something slowly drift away from the friendly conversation it had started as. Kelly wasn't backing away from the subject. Jenna wasn't changing her position. And both women seemed determined to explain themselves. The smiles that had opened the interview were now almost completely gone. The conversation had crossed into unfamiliar territory. And deep down, Kelly allowed a brief silence to settle over the studio. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't trying to win an argument. Instead, she looked directly at Jenna and spoke with the same measured tone that had carried the interview from the beginning. "I think people deserve clarity." It sounded simple, but the sentence carried far more weight than its words suggested. Jenna slowly nodded. "I've already given you clarity," she replied. "The problem is that people only hear the parts they want to hear." Kelly didn't interrupt. She waited. Then she quietly answered, "Maybe that's true sometimes. But when thousands of people reach the same conclusion after hearing the same comments, isn't it worth asking why?" A ripple moved through the audience. Nobody clapped, nobody laughed. Everyone simply watched. Jenna took a slow breath before responding. "I think we've reached a point where disagreement automatically becomes controversy. People hear one sentence, remove the surrounding conversation, and suddenly you're defending something you never intended." Kelly acknowledged the point with a slight nod. "I understand that." Then she added another sentence, "But intention and impact aren't always the same thing." That landed differently. For the first time since the interview began, Jenna's smile disappeared completely. She leaned back in her chair and folded her arms. "I don't think it's fair to hold people responsible for every possible interpretation of their words," Kelly answered almost immediately. "Maybe not every interpretation," she paused, "but we are responsible for explaining ourselves when people are genuinely hurt." The room became noticeably quieter. Even the audience members, who had been smiling earlier, now sat motionless. Kelly continued carefully. "You have millions of viewers. So do I. Many of them are parents trying to balance careers, children, finances, and responsibilities every single day. When they tell us something we've said affected them, I believe we owe them a conversation." Jenna looked down briefly before looking back across the stage. "And that's exactly what I'm trying to have." Kelly reached toward the small stack of papers resting beside her chair. The movement immediately caught everyone's attention. She didn't wave the pages dramatically. She simply picked them up. "I wanted to make sure I quoted you accurately." Jenna's eyebrows lifted. "You brought transcripts." "I brought notes, so we could discuss your comments fairly." The audience shifted in their seats. The atmosphere had changed completely. What had started as a celebrity interview now felt almost like an investigative conversation. Kelly glanced down at the paper before reading one section aloud. She asked Jenna how she believed viewers should interpret comments suggesting that some parents appeared to place professional ambitions ahead of family responsibilities. Before Kelly had even finished the question, Jenna leaned forward. "That's exactly the problem. You're reducing an entire conversation into one sentence." Kelly remained calm. "So help us understand the larger point." Jenna sighed. "My point has always been balance. My point has always been priorities. My point has never been attacking every working mother." Kelly listened carefully. "But can you understand why some people felt judged?" Jenna hesitated. "Only for a moment. I understand why people were upset. I don't agree that I judge everyone." Kelly nodded slowly. Then she asked another question. "If someone watching today works 12 hours because they have no other choice, what would you want that person to hear from you right now?" For the first time all afternoon. Jenna didn't answer immediately. She searched for the words. Finally she spoke. I would tell them they're doing their best. I would tell them parenting is incredibly difficult. And I would tell them every family's situation is different. Several audience members nodded. The tension eased, but only slightly. Kelly smiled politely. I think people would appreciate hearing that. Then her expression became serious again. But I also think they would ask why those words didn't come across the first time. Jenna shook her head. Because nobody wanted to hear them. They wanted a headline. They wanted outrage. Kelly gently disagreed. I think many people simply wanted reassurance. There's a difference. The exchange continued back and forth. Neither woman raised her voice. Neither wanted to appear emotional. Yet, every answer seemed to create another difficult question. The audience could feel both sides becoming increasingly determined. Jenna believed she was defending herself. Kelly believed she was defending viewers. Neither appeared failing at home. Jenna hesitated again. It wasn't a long pause, but it was long enough for everyone in the studio to notice. I think, she stopped, collected her thoughts. I think life is more complicated than simple answers. Kelly smiled faintly. I agree, which is exactly why these conversations matter. For a brief moment, it looked as though the interview might finally settle down. The tension seemed to soften. Audience members relaxed. Some even expected applause. Instead, one unexpected comment changed everything. Jenna quietly said, she believed. Modern culture sometimes celebrated professional achievement while overlooking the importance of being fully present with family. Kelly understood the point, but she immediately followed with another observation. The challenge is that many viewers hear statements like that and feel they're being told they're failing as parents simply because they work. Jenna shook her head. I can't control how everyone feels. Kelly answered softly. No, but we can choose our words carefully. That sentence seemed to strike a nerve. Jenna straightened in her chair. So now we're policing language. Kelly calmly replied. No, we're talking about responsibility. The studio fell silent once again. Every camera remained locked on the two women. No one in the audience looked away. Everyone sensed the conversation had reached a turning point. Neither side appeared angry. Not yet, but the discussion was no longer simply about one interview or one quote. It had become something much larger, a debate about public influence, personal accountability, and how powerful words can become once they leave the person who first speaks them, and within seconds.